Babying our kids. Has our generation gone too far? Now, when you think about babying your kid, here's the first thing I think of is everyone's talking about this. Like, kids are being babied today, or we let our kids get away for so much, or when I was a kid. This is like conversations that are happening all around the country in so many homes. One spouse says to another, "You're babying our kid. Gosh, how do you expect them to grow up? They're going to be babied forever." The other spouse argues, "It's just a kid. Like, you have to chill out. It's just a kid." So on one hand, everyone's talking about this topic, but here is my take. On the other hand, nobody is talking about this. Nobody. It's hard to find a podcast, a good YouTube of somebody who is in this field or in this space to bring some wisdom and bring some help on this super sensitive topic. Like, this is hard. I got my notes right in front of me, and for this episode, and I have more notes for this episode than I have on any other one because it's a complicated topic, and I want to take it head on with Jordan here today. I want us to take it on with strength, with wisdom, but also with sensitivity, because this is a complicated topic. Jordan, have you ever had a conversation with anybody, a friend, even with your own, spouse, Danny, about babying our kids?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to first trying to figure out, how do you want to parent? I mean, if you and your spouse are not on the same page about that, it can cause some fights.
Jeez, so many fights.
I mean, think about our generation. You could go back to the spanking generation. I mean, you would get flicked in the mouth, whooped on the butt.
Yeah.
If you said a curse word, how about soap in the mouth? I don't know if anybody had to go through that.
Me, I got lots of stories about. I used to have liquid soap in the mouth, orange dial. Please continue. Oh, so bad.
Disgusting.
So bad. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was completely different than the way it seems like most people are trying and attempting to parent their kids now.
Yes.
And I obviously want to know why. And I don't even know if there's an answer, but there's a huge shift into how people are parenting their kids. And have we gone too far is the question. But more importantly, before we get to that, where do you think the timeline began for the switch?
Oh my gosh. I don't even, that's such a deep question. I can't even answer it right now because that's just too good of a question. I have to give me a second to even think about that.
The millennials? Is it
right.
the young?
Oh, I think I know the answer. I think I know the answer. Let me do a little hook on that, and let me give you my answer later on. What an interesting question. Everyone think about that. Answer Jordan's question yourself. When did that switch happen? When we started wondering, are we babying our kids too much? Here's a couple words on it. Are we babying our kids? In my opinion, the answer is yes and yes. Yes and yes. But before you make a judgment, hear me out, because we're actually talking about a verb, babying. And so we're going to be playing around with words here today to help bring some clarity to this confusion, because this word has brought about a fog into the parenting space. What is babying? Is it good? Is it bad? What is rescuing, enabling, people pleasing, being hard on a kid, setting the bar too low? So if you think about it, what do babies get? Well, babies should get connection and comfort, and they should get a ton of it. You should give so much connection, so much comfort to a baby. You cannot give too much comfort and too much connection to a baby or a toddler. This is a fact. And if anyone is wondering this, well, you've got some work to do on your mind and learning about parenting and how to be a freaking great parent to a baby and to a toddler. There's even a famous psychologist that wrote a famous book. He's been a lot well known on podcasts and on social media. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate, and he wrote a really big book, and he's like a really profound, soft-speaking guy, but he's helping us understand about childhood trauma and about attachment theory, and everything you hear from me has to come through this lens of attachment theory, attachment psychology, positive parenting, connection parenting. So babies are very vulnerable, and so our expectations for a baby's behavior should be very low. A baby should act like a baby. A toddler should act like a toddler. A 4-year-old should have regular bad moods, bad episodes, whininess, crying, because they're 4. Sometimes I'll make a video on social media, and it'll be about like some topic. You'll be like, oh, how do I apply this to my 3-year-old? I was like, what the heck are you talking about? How is
Yeah.
this is not for a 3-year-old? Like, is that obvious? This video does not apply to your 6-year-old who's in first grade. Like, do I need to make like a freaking like warning video on every freaking video I make? Like, does not apply to 2-year-old
Right.
kids, right? Like,
Right.
so like babies are so vulnerable. When I think about vulnerable babies, here's a story I think of. Gosh, one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life is I was sitting in my bed and I was watching TV. We were living in this condo in San Ramon, California. And our oldest child, Maddie, was only like 2 years old at the time, maybe 3. And we had this large TV, because remember, it wasn't that long ago. TVs weighed about 100 pounds, and they were these huge blocks. You know what I mean? They were huge and heavy. You remember that? Now we have these flat screens.
Yeah.
But
No,
we
it's
put
tough.
this TV, was in our bedroom, and we had a chest of drawers. So I think you might know where this story's going. The chest of drawers was open on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
And this cute little 2-3-year-old little girl was climbing on the chest of drawers while her dad was supposed to be watching her, but he was in bed watching the TV. And it all happened so fast. I saw it like in slow motion. Was this an act of God? It really might have been. It really might be a miracle. I don't know. I don't know how God works or angels work or supernatural stuff, but I saw the TV, the whole thing started tipping, Jordan. This huge, heavy chest of drawers with this 100-pound TV, and it would have landed right on top of my child. It would have hit her right in the head. Might have caused damage or worse. Something happened to me, and I literally jumped up out of my bed. It's like so fast. I dove head first, but almost like a swimmer with one arm out.
Yeah.
To protect the child, all within like a millisecond. And the TV landed on the side of my head, full force on the side of my head, right on the temple. And I covered the child underneath me while in like a crouching yoga position, so the child didn't feel anything.
Oh my gosh.
And I was fine. I had a bruise. And I'm just like, what the hell? This is so bad what just happened. I'm so scared and I'm so angry at myself. And our children are so vulnerable, aren't they? They can get hurt so easily. It like tears me up even thinking about this story, which I guess is a happy story or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, it could have been a completely different. I mean, nowadays you put together a new dresser and they've got the safety equipment in there now for you to
Yeah,
drill it
man.
into a stud so that if it were to come forward, because you're not the first person to experience this, unfortunately, it happens
I
all the time.
know. I know. So when I think about our kids being babied, kids should be babied. You should baby a baby. Can you baby a baby too little? Yes, right? Can you baby a baby too little? The answer is yes. You can absolutely ask a child to grow up too fast. You can absolutely tell a second grader kid to grow up too fast and stop acting like a second grader. Can you baby a baby too much? No, I'm playing with words. I might get dizzy here. Can you baby a child too little? Okay, so a child. Well, the answer is yes. You can baby a child too much, and you absolutely can baby a teenager too much. I have some
Right.
clients who are in their 20s, Jordan. They're in their 20s and they're a mess. And they have just been babied and rescued and bailed out. And they're a mess. And you can't help but look at the parents first and say, what
Right.
the crap has been going on in that house? What do you think about that?
I just think it's a timeline, right? So you have a baby, an infant, and you can't baby it too much. You can baby it too little. So you want to make sure you're giving all the love. As that baby becomes a toddler, it could start to walk maybe, and you have to give it some freedom to fall down. If you sit there all the time and don't let it fall, it's not going to learn to walk. And what's the most important thing about falling? Learning to get back up.
Yeah, man.
So you have to
Yeah.
immediately start to back away. And I feel like as the progression of these kids get older and older, our job is to back away slowly and slowly and slowly so that they can fly on their own. I mean, in
Right.
the animal kingdom, these birds are sitting with their children and then eventually they just throw them out of the nest and say, you got to fly. There's no babying going on in the animal kingdom.
Yes.
For some reason, we have decided to, I don't know what words you want to use, helicopter parent, or just, we're too involved and we're not coaching. We're not guiding them
Yeah, man.
for release, for freedom, for flight once they leave our house.
We're about to talk about why. Why is so many of our generation struggling with that? Now, I want to take us through like this journey here. And one of the things it's happened to me is I have a couple of moms on my social media. They're asking me, "Can you please start making videos for toddlers?" I don't really specialize in like kids, 5 and under. But here is when you think about toddlers. Here's what one of the main things I want you to think about. I want you to think about attachment theory, that your child is looking at you every day and wondering, can I trust this person? Will they be there for me? Will they be there for me when I cry, when I feel sad? Can I trust them to hold me? Or are they going to pretty much tell me, suck it up? You're 5. It's time for you to grow up, right? So attachment is, and on the opposite end of that is what we have. One of the symptoms of that is what's called reactive attachment disorder. Reactive attachment disorder, I do a lot of storytelling on this topic as I'm teaching on it. In some of my other previous videos, I'll do some really interesting stuff, but it stands for, we'll call it RAD, R-A-D. And so it's a condition, and it's most commonly found in babies who are adopted, who did not have a secure attachment with a parent figure sometime between the ages of birth and 2 years old. And it can happen even later on past age 2 with some trauma. But essentially the caregiver, whether it be the own mother or a father, either because of drugs or because they were in a foster care and they weren't getting care from the parent, or they're in an orphanage in an African country or in Russia or in China, they weren't getting held. They weren't getting, like, they would cry because that's what babies do. They cry and they want attention. They want someone to change their diaper, hold them, and nobody came. So the message of the psychology is, I'm on my own here. And so when we think about babying, we need to think about and build this on like a healthy foundation. Think about, okay, how do I build a healthy attachment with my child? And yet then, as Jordan was kind of saying, which we'll get to, then baby them when they're a baby, but then learn how to go through these stages of parenting. Because what we have today is we have helicopter parenting, and we have this new term. It's called lawnmower parenting. Have you heard of this one
No,
before?
have
I mean, think about, what is
this?
a lawnmower? You get a parent out there with a lawnmower mowing down all the kids' problems, making their life easier. So I hear this in my clients all the time. They don't tell me I'm a lawn parent, but what they say is, they say things like, yeah, my kid's son or my kid's dad, he's a narcissist and he's horrible. And so we're divorced, but my son's been through so much. I just don't want him to go through anything else. Here's how it might sound as well. Might sound. My daughter has anxiety, and she was bullied in the 5th grade. And so, yeah, she's been through so much, and I don't want to put any extra pressure on her. Here's how it might sound. Yeah, my son, I know he's screen addicted, but who isn't? And I don't know if I want to push them or push him to do anything else, because, all of his friends are online and he's just going through some hard stuff. He's got depression, he's on medication. And I could also be like, you know what? I know my son forgot his lunch, but you know what? I mean, I'm his mom and I'm a stay-at-home mom. So yeah, I drive to deliver his lunch at his elementary school about 2 or 3 times a week, because you know what? He needs me, and I like feeling needed. So like, and I don't like the idea of him not having a food at lunchtime. See how it can kind of come out like that, Jordan?
Yeah. I don't know. Some of these folks don't understand, I guess, that there's got to be a balance between like being too lenient and being too I guess much the other side, whatever that would be, saying yes to everything, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, wouldn't it be, if you are doing everything for your child, you're not teaching them how to
Mhm.
do things for themselves?
Right. Right. But what if he's 11? He's got ADHD, so he's not old enough to do these things. See how this is why we're
Yes.
making this episode,
Right.
right? Because it's challenging. So yeah, let me just ask you, give me your thoughts. Like, when you think about babying our kids or rescuing kids, what do you think of, man? What do you think of?
I mean, I think the most important thing every parent feels is, um, a love for their child. They want to make sure they're safe. And one of the
Okay.
reasons why they're coming up with, maybe you would call them excuses, some of the examples you just gave,
Okay.
is because they want to keep them safe and they want to protect them. And maybe it's from the outside elements. But the problem is, you can't put your kid in a bubble, right? I
Mm.
mean, you have to allow your kid to have real world experiences. And so the problem is we know a lot about the world as
Oh
parents,
my gosh,
and
we
it
do.
is so scary. There are some
Oh,
wackos out there. You want to
yeah,
protect your kids from predators, and
yeah.
now it's just so easy for them to jump in with social media, the bullying going on there. Someone can
Mhm.
slide into someone's DMs and you don't even know it as a parent. I mean, there's
Mm.
so many more different curveballs now than when we were kids. But like when I was a kid,
Okay.
I don't feel like I was babied at all. I mean, I had to step up and become a mature parent real quick because when my parents got divorced, I was in 4th grade.
Okay.
My parents moved, my mom moved to a different state, and
Right.
I was in an all year round school. So there was basically 3 months out of the year, different times of the year, where I had a whole month off from school,
Right.
me, my younger brother, and my younger
Oh, yeah,
sister.
you mentioned
And
this last episode.
I have a single parent. So like I had to
Right.
do stuff myself, right?
You
And
did,
so
man.
quickly I had to become an
Yeah.
adult, and there was no babying for me because it was like, hey, it's time to,
Mhm.
as Woody Harrelson says, nut up or shut up. so,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
so there
Oh.
was no time for me to just slack off or be
Yeah, right.
irresponsible because I had 2 other individuals to take care of.
Did
And so
your mom even say to you, "We need you to be the man of the house. We need
no,
you to step up"?
no,
No, she
no.
didn't. It just
It
naturally.
just
Did you feel?
naturally.
Okay,
She wasn't
naturally.
there. She was at work. I knew she
Right.
needed to work, and so I was like, "Well, I
Right.
gotta watch these kids. What are
Yeah.
we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" So like we would
Right.
literally go on walks down to the local mini mart on like a main busy road. Me and I guess that would be like a 2nd grader and a
Yeah.
kindergarten. We would just walk down the road. These kids in the middle of the day.
You
Go to
barely
the
see that anymore, which is kind of
never.
sad. It's
It
so
is kind of
sad.
sad.
Like it's sad that we don't see kids on bikes as much as we used to. We don't see kids out. That's a whole nother topic. But please continue. So you're out there taking walks with a kindergartner and down to the mini mart. Okay, I cut you off. Tell me more. Yeah.
I'm in the elements. I'm in the danger zone. I'm outside, right? So we would go to the local video store and the little mini mart. We'd
Oh,
get some candy.
Blockbuster.
We would get
Yes.
VHS tapes, right?
Oh, let's go.
Oh man. And I mean, I got to the point where I was a little sneaky, and I got friends with the video guy, and he would let me
Yeah.
watch, like, remember It, the original It, the
Oh
clown
yeah.
movie with,
Oh, I know
oh my
all about
gosh, it was so scary.
sneaking.
But he
Oh,
would
VHS life. We
sneaking
should have a
these
whole
videos.
episode on that.
We should. And then we'd go home and we would just watch movies and hang out,
Mhm.
and that was my
Yeah.
life. But thinking about this now, I mean, even my
Okay.
mom has come to me later in life and she goes, "Are you, kind of messed up from what I put you through as a kid?" Like she's
Wow,
asked
she
me.
said
She
that.
Oh yeah. She was like, I put a lot
Wow.
on you,
Yeah.
and I just have always wondered like if that is, in the back of your
Okay.
mind, like,
Okay.
no.
So can I jump in? So you
Yeah,
said
jump
no,
in.
but I think about your mom. I know her. I used to know her well. I mean, such an amazing woman. So sweet. She's such a nurturer. She's so sweet and fine, very popular for all the right reasons, but also like a super wise, savvy businesswoman, like kind of like the whole package. So I think the fact that now she's saying, as you're, did I mess you up? It says two things. One, it tells you about your mom's just open heart and her emotional awareness, her love. She's open minded. I think, too, it probably is a reflection of how well you handled this. Like, you must have been like a great kid, maybe a people pleaser. I don't know. But you were just like, you weren't acting out at a young age, because if you were, then she wouldn't be asking you that question.
Right.
Right?
It wasn't until I met you I started acting out. No, I'm just teasing. Um, it was we're a product of our environment. And so like, is there a part of that with me now? Yeah. I'm more conservative. I don't
Mhm.
take huge risks. I'm not the one that
Nature
was
and
getting out in
nurture.
trouble. Right.
Yep.
And now as I'm a parent and I'm
Yeah.
looking at my kids,
Okay.
am I okay with them going off on their own? I think about this.
Ooh,
Like,
right.
would I be okay with my kids walking on a main busy road to the local mini mart and the local video
Mhm.
store and come back with no communication, nothing?
No communication. You
No
got me there.
communication.
No, life's 360, right?
Right. So now, I've allowed my kids to have certain freedom in the neighborhood I'm in. I'm
Yeah.
like, go, but it comes with a stipulation. We've got these
Right.
watches. We can call them. We can
Uh-huh.
track them to see where they
Yeah.
are.
Right.
Because I just don't know. if I'm becoming a helicopter parent,
Mm-hmm.
product of a society that is, or
Mm-hmm.
if it's just more awareness and wanting to keep my kids safe. I mean,
Oh,
right now, let me ask you
this is
this.
why
Let me
we're
ask you
having the
this.
episode. This is exactly why we're having the episode, because we're all living in that tension. If you're not in that tension, well, then you should be. If you're not asking yourself, am I being babying my kid? Am I being too, or am I being too lenient with my kid? Well, you're missing out on the beauty and the art of parenting, right? So, yes.
Right. So my last question to you, or one of my questions to you, is now when you get a dresser, do you screw the safety net into the back of the wall?
Either yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like for sure. I've become so much of a fearful man in parenting. Like my latest thing right now is that my 6-year-old has a window right above her bed. And so she sits on the windowsill, but it's a 2-story house.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
make up these stories because my cousin, Connor Donahue, he passed away at age 21 or something as a college student, and because he was in New York City in college, and the balcony, this is such a horrible, tragic story. I don't know all the details of it, but I believe the balcony crumbled on his apartment and he fell to his death.
Gosh.
So now I've got 2 friends who are, firefighters. I've got a sister who's an ER nurse. And I've been through trauma and some horrible things in my life. And I look at a window and I imagine my daughter is going to lean against that window, fall backwards to her death,
Right.
and I need to put bars on this window. So like I'm
Right.
thinking, so I'm like telling her and scolding her and freaking out. Like, I told you, do not lean up against that window. And I'm like, have I gone too far, or am I being good parenting? It's confusing, right?
Confused. And that's, I think, the bottom line is any parent with any example is asking themselves that question. And so
Yeah.
we're a product of our environment. We know a lot instantaneously through social media. There's stories like this that can be shared, and now people have this awareness. And so we're becoming either more fearful or more protective. I don't know what it is, but now we've got this society of helicopter parenting. So
Well,
that's
let me jump in.
let me
Are
ask
we?
you, why
I will.
do you think we baby our kids? I mean,
Okay.
are we just trying to rescue them?
Okay, I think I know the answer to this question. And I think the purpose of this podcast is to not become more fearful or more lenient. We are gathered here today to become more wise, right? To be wise on this topic, to know ourselves, to study ourselves. Because just like all the great first responders we have, the EMTs, the firefighters, the nurses, these people do highly emotional work. Parenting is the most emotional thing that many of us will ever do. And so we need to realize that so much of parenting happens in our own minds. How we think about our children, how we think about windows on a 2-story building, how we think about the mini mart. And so so here I want to say this to be helpful. I believe that we are a generation of scared parents. We parent in so much fear. We are so afraid, and it needs to be talked about. It needs to be exposed, and it needs to be healed. I think we're afraid, and this goes back to when you asked me the question 15 minutes ago, because we were on social media recently, and we saw a child, and we heard news about a child being kidnapped in a state 4 states away. We're scared because we saw something on the news happening, that something bad happened to some Americans while they were on vacation in Mexico. An entire country of many, 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 many millions of people. Well, one American had something bad happen to them, and we are scared. We are scared of traumatizing our kids because people like Dr. Gabor Mate are telling us about childhood trauma. We are scared about not being vulnerable and empathy because people like Brene Brown tell us about vulnerability. We are scared of our kids killing themselves because we know of a teenager who took their life. We are scared of them not going to college because we feel like if they don't go to college, well, then they're just going to get a lazy, bad job. We are scared of affecting them with blended families. We are scared of how we're going to do this with these blended families. We're scared of forcing our kids to be connected to their new step parents. And so we don't know. We're scared of not making this worse. We are scared that they're going to run away. We are scared that if we were to do restrictions on them or to restrict their screens, that it's going to make their anxiety worse, their depression worse, or that they're just not going to go to school at all if you do a screen fast. We are scared of seeing them fail because we don't want to see them fail. It's too painful for us. It's awkward. What would that mean if they fail? We are scared of seeing them get hopeless, which is a very, very painful human emotion. Feeling hopeless is so painful, to feel like there's no hope. We are scared of this, and this is very sensitive, but I'm going to say it. There are parents out there, Jordan. They are scared that their child is going to become a school shooter.
I mean, it's understandable in today's world.
Because their child or teenager is showing signs that are scary and concerning. And some of us, we parent in fear. We parent in fear. And we made this podcast, and I'm here to help you to not parent in fear anymore. Because if you're parenting in fear, you're being your best self. This is not what the kids need from you. And so, on the other hand, some people are also parenting in fear, but it manifests itself in a different way. Have you seen those t-shirts or that brand, Lions, Not Sheep?
No.
Before. Okay, you haven't seen it. It's big on the West Coast here. Lions, Not Sheep. It's a cool clothing brand, but usually in one of the brand, how it manifests itself is, I am a lion. I am an aggressive person. I do weights. I like guns. And I raise my kids to be strong like a lion and not a sheep. It's cool brand, cool clothes. I like it, but many parents are parenting in fear, and they've brought that into their parenting, Jordan. So they went to the other extreme. Stop whining. What are you, sissy? You're going to be a snowflake? No, we're not bailing you out. Suck it up. And this is not new school parenting. This is some old school parenting where these parents are seeing all this softness and all this enabling and rescuing, and they are saying, no way. So they go from one extreme to the other of, I am not, going to bail you out here. You better man up. You can't be crying. You're 9. You still acting like a child? You're 9 years old. Suck it up. And so we are all tempted to be on either of those extremes. Do you feel that in your heart? Have you seen that like with some of your friends, these extremes?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could I'm not going to bring it up on here, but as I'm thinking of my circle, there is some parents that have done that. The hard part for me is just when I witness that kind of parenting, it puts a gut in my stomach. Like when I see them treating their child a certain way, and I'm just like, this is awkward. Like, because at what point do you step in and and help that child out if they're coming down on them too hard?
Oh, it's painful, huh? No one talks about that. When you see someone either at Target or in your own relatives being very harsh with a child, that's what you're talking about.
Or like even verbal. Like I walked by a lady the other day, and the kid must have been 3. And she's dropping F-bombs at this little 3-year-old. And I'm just like, the 3-year-old. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Is it my job to be like, hey, not cool? No, I mean, but it's not cool.
Dude, serious story. This is kind of embarrassing. True story. I don't have the details because it happened 10 years ago. So I was in Target, and I saw a mother roughing up her 9-year-old daughter, cussing her out. I think she was like a Armenian descent or something. And I was triggered, man. And I was pissed. And she was publicly shaming her, cussing her out, and grabbing her and forcing her in Target. And I did something. Yeah. I did something weird, man. I'm kind of ashamed of it. I did something weird.
Did you actually intervened?
In a weird way, dude. Super weird.
You threw like a toilet paper roll at him.
No, like honestly, that's pretty weird. No, man. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but it's so embarrassing now. I guess let's share it. I went up to her and I said something like, hey, ma'am, excuse me. Do I need to pull out my badge right now and arrest you? I pretended to be a cop. I pretended to be a cop, dude. I was like, hey, ma'am, do I need to call CPS? And do I need to have some of my colleagues right now come down here and arrest you for child abuse? I literally pulled out my wallet, but I didn't show a badge. I didn't open it, because I when I was opening wallets, I was so enraged. And I just said a few.
What was the outcome?
I just said a few more weird things. I mean, I'm a 6'2" dude going up, and she was even with her grandmother. And I mean, I just intimidated them, and I was just trying to protect the freaking child.
Right.
And I mean, then I just walked away, and I was like, oh, that was pretty weird. Maybe, and I told Danielle about it, and I don't remember how she responded, but she was probably cool about it. I don't
It's
know,
just
man.
weird. Like, there's so many different ways people parent their kids, and helicopter parenting obviously is a huge problem. But then you go the other extreme, like you're mentioning, and being that's like verbal and abusive, especially publicly shaming them like that. That
Right.
could do even more damage in my thoughts. So that
I-
there's a middle ground that we got to figure out here.
Well, what we have here is we are a generation of parents who parent in fear because many of us have been traumatized. So we parent in too much gentleness because we were so hurt by our parents' aggression. So we went from one extreme to the other. Some of us, this is very common. So some of my clients, he or she is like a really high functioning business person or CEO, and their parents were not they didn't really parent them. They didn't really give them advice. They didn't give them encouragement. They didn't challenge them. They didn't discipline. So now these highly functioning adults are really parenting their child. Now they're parenting because they say, like, this is what kids need. If I had that, then I would have become even better than who I am. So see how they just go from one extreme to the next? You with me?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
they were
we're
underparented. They
and
were
then so they overparent.
underparented. So now they're overparenting, or they were
Right.
overparented. Now they're underparenting, or they went through some trauma, and so now they went to the other extreme. And so if any of this relates to you, I've got good news for you and bad news. Bad news is this is not good. Good news is parenting is very emotional. And when you can learn how to manage your emotions, good things are going to happen because we want to manage our emotions so they do not manage us. So when you think about
So
like our parents too, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Any thoughts? But do you think that your mom or your parents, did our parents have fear when they were
I
parenting
mean,
us in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, whenever you grew up?
this balance that you're talking about, it sounds like we just wait another generation and then we'll be stricter parents, right? Our kids maybe will be more strict to their kids because we're so lenient, and it goes back and forth. But I can only think back a couple of generations. And so my grandparents seem to be more strict with my parents,
Oh,
but my
yeah.
parents were
Right.
still somewhat strict with me.
Right.
And
Also, because your parents grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a very structured upbringing, isn't it?
yes,
Is that cool that I
there a
said
lot of
that? Did I cross the
course, yeah.
line?
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah, that was when I was really little though. They kind of fell out of that by the time I was like 5 or 6. But they have that
Mm.
background. You're right. They do have that background, which is very important. But I know that my parents had fear. I just don't know if they showed it because they gave us
Mm.
independence, but they had to have had some fear.
Oh,
They
of
try to
course.
invoke, right? Of course. Of
Dude, I
course.
didn't even thought about that. That was so helpful you said that because my first instinct of that question was like, oh, there's no way my parents were in any fear. But dude, that's so stupid to say,
Right.
right?
Right?
That's so
Yes.
dumb to say. I'd love to ask my parents on a podcast one day, tell us, what were you afraid of when we were
I
growing
just
up? I don't know, man. I can't imagine my dad being like giving a great answer. I know I'm kind of like roasting him right now and I might be belittling him. I just can't imagine my dad saying anything deep to that. And I'm not,
And
maybe I'm being
I think it's
disrespectful to him.
it's not
I
your
just
dad.
think
It's his generation.
maybe he was just tuned out. Maybe he just felt like it's his mom's job to worry. I don't know, man.
No, I think in that generation, you weren't one to speak your feelings. You
Yeah,
bottle it
man.
up and put it
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, dude.
You don't share that. Now we're
So,
becoming more vulnerable and
oh,
sharing
it's so
more.
good. Right.
So that's the change. I don't think it's your dad, it's that generation.
If we had a time machine, we could go back and ask our dads when they're 32, what are you afraid of as parenting? And then we ask them then when they're 62, right? What were you afraid of? But you didn't
Right.
actually have the words to articulate. And that now you do. Now you're 62, right? That's kind of where you're
Right.
going with this. That's deep, man.
Yeah, it's like when they were a kid, they fell down, they broke their arm. Their father said, "Get up, dust it off, and walk it off."
Yep.
Right? And
Yep.
that is it. You be quiet, you don't cry, and you just don't show your emotion and you go with it. Now it's like, well, how do you feel? Are you sad that you can't use your arm anymore? You know what I mean? We're much deeper in the
I know.
communication
I
process
know.
that I think it's making all of us I don't know if weak is the right word, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's allowing this
Maybe it's
conversation to be had.
emotionally or unbalanced. Like, you made me think of a story. My dad trained me to kind of idolize his dad. I call him granddad. He's passed away, Ed Donahue. He trained me to view him as like an ideal, amazing person because I think he views him that way. And I had some amazing experiences with this amazing man, like only 5-star positives. I think his whole family, he's got 7 kids. I think they all love and worship him. But I don't really get a chance to know him because he passed away when I was like 12. But then my dad said to me one time, about 10 years ago, Jordan, he said this: I really don't remember spending any alone time with my dad.
Really? No
Yeah.
fishing, no,
So it's like,
outdoor.
right. And I even said that. Nothing? He's like, no. So then it's like,
Wow.
what? It's like, it's like different planets, right? It's like different, I can't even imagine, right? How do you have such admiration and love for a man that never you don't spend time with? Maybe the answer is probably he excelled at other things to show love language to my dad, or he just didn't think about it. Like, you don't know what you don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I just think it's weird,
It
and
is weird.
it doesn't sound like positive attachment theory to me, but he clearly was attached. That's for sure. Very healthy family from what I hear.
Yeah. There is obviously a huge difference in generational parenting. I mean, I was reading a book. It's called Follow the River. It's amazing. Took place in the
Hmm.
late 1700s, and this
Yeah.
lady got captured. It's like when we were basically exploring the Ohio River Valley and kind of going
Yeah.
through the Cumberland Gap and getting to
Yeah.
Kentucky. And basically this woman got captured by some Shawnee Indians, and it was her journey of from when she got captured and heading back. And I mean, it was
Hmm.
true grit. It was like
Yeah.
she was pregnant, she had the baby on the trail, could not cry or she would die. I mean, it was
Oh,
hardcore.
oh my.
And
Right.
so you have this several generations of just hardcore people, with the wars that our grandparents had to go
Hmm.
through and the
Yes.
pandemics and everything. And
Uh,
now
survival.
we've got it nice because of that
Yeah, we do.
history. And we
We
have it
do.
so nice that I feel like we're kind of digging ourselves into a grave, so to speak.
Well, yeah, what you're talking about, as one of the things you're talking about here, is the psychology of comfort and dopamine, and that our culture is so comfortable. And one of the guys I listen to is Dr. Andrew Huberman, and listen to him. He's on Joe Rogan a lot. He has his own podcast. He does a lot of studies about biohacking and about the human nervous system and the body. And yeah, there's like uh, we don't have to fear for our lives, like some of us, right? Some of us living in maybe Chicago, right? Urban city Chicago, maybe that's different, but where our lives are just so comfortable and these screens have hijacked our mind of these dopamine addictions. And now it's just, we look at our kids and we want them to be safe and comfortable, and it's
Uh-huh.
causing problems, man. It's really causing a lot of problems in parenting, in marriage, and in adolescent psychology.
So then what did our parents do differently? I mean, obviously they had fear. I don't know. Did you answer, like, did you feel like your father and your mother had fear?
On the surface, the answer would be a strong no. But if you look
Right.
at my mother's tendency to aggression, which is a tendency, wasn't always like that. You can see now, looking back, that yes, my mom was a very afraid person, and I think she felt very alone in our marriage. I think she felt very unloved. I think she felt unsupported, and I think that she felt, and she did the best she could, and she ended up raising 3 great kids. But yeah, I don't think that they were afraid of us getting kidnapped. I mean, I used to ride my bike all around town, man.
Me too.
It was the best with my friends. And I would, self esteem comes from doing esteemable things. So I would do esteemable things. I would ride my bike around, and I would, adventure, build self esteem, independent choices. Playing Minecraft for 2 hours a day does not build self esteem. Excelling at Fortnite or being on Instagram is not an esteemable thing. It does not build esteemable self-esteem. So I don't know. I think when I think about fear, I think for me, with my dad being a lawyer and my mom, being a high-level teacher, master's degree type of stuff, it was about education. Like you've got to just go to college and you've got to take care of your grades. And if you do that, everything's going to be okay. And if you don't, well, we got some issues.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Well, I mean, you did that. You went to college. I mean, you're doing
Mm-hmm.
something with your life. So obviously something was right. I mean, you're Sean Donahue hosting a podcast. You have a lot of knowledge when it comes to parenting. You've learned a
Yeah.
lot of stuff on the way, and a lot of that comes from your childhood too.
Let me share a couple thoughts with you, and I'd love to get your opinion. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So one thing I've learned to how do we navigate these waters is language, word choice. Let me share a few words with you, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Okay. We want to. If you were to ask any 16-year-old are you a victim? And then actually help them understand what a victim means. The answer should actually be yes. Because most of the 16-year-olds have various things to complain about. You could say that, yes, I went through a hard time with COVID, right? Every 16-year-old can say that because they were going through COVID when they were 12. You with me?
Yeah.
They can tell you stories about how they were bullied, about how they have different condition. Maybe they have ADHD. Maybe their parents are divorced. Maybe their parents fight. Maybe they were picked on by one sibling. Maybe they have this problem. They have struggles. You with me?
Yeah. Yes, I'm with you, but that drives me nuts because we need to teach our kids to not have that mentality.
Well, this is where I'm going with this. So parents are teachers in every home is a school. So by helping them understand and validating that they have gone through hard times. If you want to use a big word like victim, go for it. Because some of them have been victims of certain things, right? But that's a big word. If you're not comfortable with that word, then just pick a different word. That's like a synonym. So when we validate them that they've gone through hard times, this is hard, that builds attachment, that builds trust. That's connection. You with me? Because by telling somebody who's 16 is COVID, suck it up. You didn't die. Yeah, you lost 2 years of your life. What's the big deal? See how that's the opposite of validating someone's experience?
Yes, I'm waiting for what you're getting to because it's making me annoyed. But yes, I know what you're
But the
saying.
teaching here is we want to teach them that they have a choice to be victors.
Thank you.
To be victors. Yeah, it was coming, buddy.
Thank
to
you.
be victims or victors. They can choose in their own mind how they want to view this situation, how they want to view that situation, how they want to view any situation in life. And schools should really teach this to our kids. And so what we're going to do over the last few minutes of our podcast here is give tips and tools how to empower our kids, not baby them, but empower them. With the word power is in there. Power of mind, power over their circumstances, and to choose to be a victim, to be a victor, not a victim. What do you think, man?
Yes. You have to rise up. Do not have the victim mentality, or life is going to continue to knock you down. And I tell the kids that all the time. I mean, I try to teach them as much as I can. I try to give them responsibility. Okay.
So no, like tell it. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Tell me, how do you empower your kids? Because I like where you're going with this, and it's so cool. Like I'm already like you can hear the way you talk, your tone. Like this is what you do as a dad. Like you're just.
This is what we do as people. Like anybody
No,
who
man,
comes to me and says they're victim.
I didn't get this though. I'm telling you, I didn't get this teaching growing up from my dad.
I didn't either.
So you're just like making it sound like this is what everyone does. I'm just like slowing the pace down because you're talking pretty fast. Like this is beautiful, man. I want to know. I really want to know. What do you say to your kids to teach them this psychology to build grit, perseverance, and victorhood in their mentality?
It all comes down to the simple approach is looking at life at a glass half full. Okay. But to teach this to the kids, it takes time, right? It's not going to happen easy. So I make sure that, just in their normal lives, I want to make sure they have responsibility, that they are doers, that they have checklists, things that they can, participate in and show that like, hey, I'm getting my own dopamine rush by checking off the list of things to do so that I can maybe get something at the end or whatever we agree to. The hard part is our kids are stuck on these screens, as you mentioned. And on some of these screens, there's some great programs. Don't get me wrong. And I'm going to shout out a program which I love, and it's the Dude Perfect guys. They're making crazy trick shots, and they're amazing for kids. But the problem with Dude Perfect is a lot of what they do is amazing success. And for a kid, they're seeing amazing success in 60 seconds.
Oh,
They're not
interesting.
seeing the process of the failure to get to success because YouTube's
Whoa.
about capturing me right now. And so I'm like, we're watching bottle flipping and, my kids can't
Bottle
get it.
flipping. So throwing a bottle and having it
Yes,
land on its
having it
butt or
land.
whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and you do multiple, and now there's dice stacking and cup stacking and all this stuff. It could be the Rubik's Cube, whatever you want to do. All I'm saying is with these videos, everything is condensed in such a short time. They're not watching the failures. So when they
Mm.
fail, they just give up. And they're like, "Oh, can't do
Oh
it.
gosh, that's
Not
so
good."
deep.
So
That's
I
so
have to
deep.
teach them like you have to fail. You have to be bad at something to get good at something. You
Hmm.
can't just be good. And
Wow.
so there's a process to get there. And I try to instill that into them. Let's just say sports. I got my kids. I'm like, hey, you guys got to do something. I don't care what it is. Pick 2 things. You got to do it.
Cool.
And they start off and they're not good, and they
Hmm.
want to quit. And if I was the lenient parent, I'd be like, oh, you don't like it? Okay, then I'm going to let
Hmm.
you quit and just stay at home. No, no, no. You're going to stick it out. And then I've noticed after a 1-2 year period of them sticking out, they're like, I'm really liking it because I'm good at it. It takes a while. So this is hopefully teaching them some kind of patience,
Oh, it's so good.
which some would say is a virtue.
I think that's just brilliant parenting that you are helping them to watch these amazing YouTubers do these amazing things on Dude Perfect, but then you're helping them see, hey, you're like helping them to understand that this doesn't just happen overnight. This takes some of those videos. I mean, they fail like thousands and thousands of times until they hit that trick shot.
Right.
That
Or
is
think about, I
life.
don't know if your kids have ever asked you, ask me, hey, can I have a YouTube channel? Everyone wants a YouTube channel now. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, who's going to edit that? Well,
Right.
you are,
Right.
Dad. No, I'm not going to edit that.
Right.
Let me teach you how to edit. If you can learn how to edit, they
Mm-hmm.
sat down one time, we edited a video, and they were like, they've never asked me again
Yeah,
because they
that's
saw
no
the
fun.
process of
That's no
editing it.
fun. Oh my
Right.
gosh. Right. Everyone wants a podcast, but dude, it took 2 years to actually launch this podcast. So much hard work. Episode 1 was released 1 year after Jordan and I recorded it because it was hard. I got stuck. I got afraid. I had to deal with all these problems that popped up, and it just like it's so hard. Gosh, dude, you are raising 3 empowered kids who are going to be 16 one day, and they're going to have some things to complain about. They're going to have some problems,
Of
just like
course.
every other, and they're going to choose to hopefully follow after a chip off the old block, to choose to be victors. Love it, man.
I hope so. This is the fun thing about parenting. It's going to take a whole journey for me to figure out if this is successful or not. I won't find out till they're 18, 19, 20, 30.
Yeah,
But
let me comfort you right now by saying something,
okay.
because I know what some of our listeners are thinking right now too. Parents are teachers and every home's a school, but it's their job to be learners. And some of our kids are slow learners. I was a slow learner. So if your kid is 16 or 21 and still struggling with some of these values that you've been teaching them, just know like that's normal and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're a bad teacher, right? Just because you go to the local church, the local synagogue or the mosque, and the preacher person tells you some good things, that doesn't mean you're going to listen. That doesn't mean they're a bad teacher. It just means you're not ready to receive that lesson right now. Because if you evaluate your teaching based on your child's performance, you are screwing this whole thing up. That's not fair. Don't do that to yourself, and don't do that to them, because these kids are going to push your buttons. Because the problem is that when Jordan's kids become teenagers, they're not going to be doing those checklists, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be, they're going to have times when they really want to complain and they really want to say that they're a victim. That's going to be hard for you, because your values are very much into victorhood. You with me?
Yeah, I'm 100%
So how are
with
you going to handle that when that happens, or when it already does happen? Right? Are you going to parent wisdom, or are you going to parent fear?
Well, I mean, I'm learning along the way, and the more I get older and the more I learn, I feel like the more patience I have, and hopefully the more wisdom I can invoke.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now we actually get to the time of the podcast where we get some official answers from the family coach himself.
So yeah, here's 3 action steps for all of us parents. And I hope that you enjoy these 3 tips, and I hope they really reach your heart. But because I don't know your specific issue, I can't give you a specific direction. So I have 3 general teachings for us to put into our minds. The first thing I think of is, how do we empower our kids to help them to be victors, is to gently set their bar high and empower them to reach it. Set their bar high. If you don't set their bar, then who's going to set it? If you don't set their bar high, well, then they may not reach it. Partly being a good parent means you think of yourself as a wise sage. Think of the wise sage you might see in Hollywood, whether you're a Yoda or you're seeing a grandmother figure. Think of the wise sages you've had in your own life. We want to adopt that role of being a wise sage. And we set their bar high, but we do it gently. Now, think of a chart. I'll maybe post this on like one of the podcast pages on my website. Think of a chart, okay? In age 0 to 6, our job is to really protect our children, right? Protect them. You don't want to have them get hit by a car, fall out of a window. You with me? You need a lot of command and control parenting. That's your job, to protect your child at age 6, 0 to 6. You with me, Jordan? Do you agree?
100%.
Now, you got to make a shift, though, because somewhere around elementary school, your primary job should not be protecting your child. What do you mean, Sean? You're crazy. No, your primary job should be teaching your child, teaching during the elementary schools, teaching them to protect themselves, teaching them how to manage their anger. This is a very important age to teach emotional intelligence and social emotional development during the elementary school. So we are teachers, and so much teaching should be taking place during these time periods, because as you hopefully will notice, the kids are very open to teaching. Now, if you have screen addiction in your home, if you made bad choices with not allowing your kids to abuse screens, or if your kid has a tendency to be hesitant towards your teaching, well, there's good news. You can solve that. In fact, think of it this way: connection before correction. The more connection you have, oftentimes the less correction you need. Now we get to the middle school ages. And during this time, your kids are watching you. They're not as interested in your life lessons anymore. They're in middle school. They want freedom. They want independence. They want to be different than you. They want to talk differently. They want to use words that bother you, like bruh, or whatever the word of the day is. And so your job is to model healthy adulthood. Their job is to not act healthy. They're the kid. Your job is to act healthy. So if you got a middle school kid, if you're yelling, avoiding, abusing screens, you may not be modeling as well as you could. Now they're in the high school age. You need another big shift. If you're trying to protect your freshmen in high school, if you're trying to force your freshmen in high school to tell you where they are, who they're hanging out with, then you are really probably causing problems in parenting, right? You are crossing the line. Your job for a high school student, and maybe starting around 8th grade, is your job is to accept the role and to thrive in the role of a coach. You're a coach. You do not command things. You do not force things. You do not hit them. You do not punish them into obedience. You want to create a win-win agreement based on trust. You want to be flexible, and you want to not rescue them from the pains of life, but you want to use discipline wisely. And I can help you with all these things through private sessions or any of my courses like the Parents Club or in Family 180. And now we get to the final stage, which I think really starts senior year of high school, where you really let go. The rites of passage ceremony. You might have a quinceañera when they're 15, or a bar mitzvah, or a confirmation, but there's another ceremony that should be taking place for your senior in high school. And for some people, it happens a little earlier. Should happen later, where you really let go and you really adopt the role of mentor. Think about, what do mentors do? Do mentors force their opinion upon their mentees? No. Do mentors guilt them, shame them, yell at them? No. Mentors are wise sages, and they are available when needed, but they have feelings too. And so that's my little chart, and I'll try to post that on one of our websites for you to look at. Jordan, what do you think about my list?
It's like a giant hug. You start off with a nice big bear hug. You squeeze tight. You're melting, and then slowly but surely you're letting go. And over the years, you finally just drift away.
Oh, Jordan. Yeah. Because I don't know about that drifting away part, but
I shouldn't have said that. You're right. You're still there, but the hug is no longer present.
It's different. Yeah. And now you move into a more adult-like relationship.
Yeah.
with your freshman in high school, right?
Yeah.
You're a young adult and I'm an adult. So action step 1 is gently set their bar high and empower them to reach it. Action step number 2 is very important. I want to speak identity into your kids. If your kid is struggling with self-control, you don't say to them, gosh, you have self-control problems. You instead say, you know what? You are a young person of self-control. I believe in you. If someone's struggling with impulsivity, you don't want to tell them you got problems, you need counseling. You are so impulsive. You say, you know what? You struggle with impulsivity, and that's okay. A lot of kids do at this age, but you're gonna grow through this. You're gonna work this out. I love you. If your one sibling is being rude to another sibling, you don't want to call them names. You say, you know what? I know you love your sibling. I know it's hard for you to show you that love sometime, and we got to address that. But I know you're a loving sibling. On that same notion, there's been a lot of psychologists that helped us understand, and I'm one of those people now, that we never ever want to call our kids smart. Nothing good happens when we call our kids smart. It is the danger of calling your kids smart is that you might build an identity which has to do with a fixed mindset. So if you don't know what a fixed mindset is or a growth mindset, go on YouTube and watch a short little video on the psychology of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. We want to build an identity on hard work. So when you see them making good choices, build identity and say, I love to see you working hard. If they're really, really good at playing a video game and they have grit and determination at a video game, because every kid actually has grit and determination, every kid. If a girl has a great Snapchat streak going, if she's great at gymnastics or soccer, but she struggles with her chores, say, I just love to see you working hard. You are a really determined person. I just want you to see you move some of that gritness and that self-control from this area of her life into your chores. See how we help her identify this? You with me?
Yeah, you're using positive words rather than the negative side of them.
Yeah, man. You build positive identity with your words. And if you need any stories of hope, here's a couple quick stories of hope. When I met this one girl, I'll call her Jessica. I worked with Jessica 3 days a week when she was a junior in high school. She was abusing alcohol, drugs. She was sleeping around. She was running away. And her parents made an agreement. They were going to try to coach her and help her understand why she was acting this way. And I met with her and I just spoke identity into her. I validated her feelings. I listened to her. And Jessica called me up last week and she said, you know, I don't know if you remember me. Of course I do, Jessica, but I'm getting married. I'm 25 and I was wondering if you would officiate my wedding.
Oh, wow. I bet that felt so good.
It felt so good. In that same week, another young teenager that I used to coach called me up. I'll call her Alyssa. When I met with Alyssa, she was a sophomore in high school. She was addicted to Xanax, and she was very abusive to her parents and aggressive and just really horrible. She was going through a hard time. And her parents forced her to meet with me. She had a rough few years of rehabs and boarding schools and trauma, and she was hurt. And she called me up and she said, Sean, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm 25 now and I'm doing really well. And I kind of want to do what you do for a living. Can we meet together?
Whoa. That's deep.
So when you speak identity into people, you got to be patient because you can't really be a great skier until someone tells you you got what it takes to become a great skier. You cannot be a person of self-control until someone tells you, you know what, you are a person of self-control. Because when somebody who loves you and who you love them, somebody older looks at you and says, you know what, you are a person of importance. You have self-control. That really matters. Don't you know what I mean?
Yeah. Which I have a comment, but I'm going to save it for my attitude of gratitude now that you've said all this.
And the last thing I want to share is we gently set their bar high, whether your kid has neurodivergency or neurotypicality. Two, you speak identity into that kid and you be patient as they reach that bar. And number 3 is something we've done. We helped our kids understand the psychology of victim versus victor, and you speak victorhood into our kids.
Victorious.
Yes. So tell me, as we wrap up our episode here, let's go to our closing segment, attitude of gratitude. It's time just for us to share what we're thankful for. So what's on your heart, man?
I mean, now after you just went through the 3 big, steps for us to, realize and memorize and write down, the second one spoke to me about speaking identity into our kids. And I have got to just give a huge appreciation. My attitude of gratitude goes to all those amazing coaches out there, because some of these kids don't have good fathers at home, and these coaches become fathers, and they're the ones speaking some of these wise words to them and help them become amazing men and amazing women in life. And they're not even blood related. And so as I'm thinking about these stories, I'm just like, shout out to the teachers and the coaches out there that are just there for some of these kids and speak some of these wise words to them, because it's what they need to hear.
They may not need algebra or geometry or European history, but to have a positive love, speak as positive adult, speak positive truth and love into a child's heart, that changes the world.
What's your attitude of gratitude today?
I'm just thankful for Jessica and Allison.
Yeah, that's a powerful story.
They just that they let me love them. That they might have rejected my love 10, 15 years ago, but they heard my love. And I'm thankful for all you parents out there that are in the thick of it, whose kids are slow learners, and you're just loving them, and that you are loving them as best as you can, because the answer to all of our problems is love. It really is.
Amen to that, brother.